gamers, thank you so much for joining us for the first annual Mind Games 500. We have a list of incredible players who'll be looking at some of the cool commanders that'll be leading us through this league. Restrictions are straightforward. You'll pick a commander. You have that for the 6 weeks of the league. Your budget is $200 or less, and that's the only restrictions. You'll get extra points for winning, of course, your pod. They will have deck restrictions and or in-game and or track-wide different abilities. So we'll have to take a look and see who gets going first. It's your boy, Panda One, aka Magic Major, with my incredible co-host, Tyler Bruns.
People have been excited about, all the hubbub that's going online about, like NBA swaps and all that kind of things. This is the draft we care about. This is the draft that matters. This is the draft that sets the tone for what Commander's going to look like in this shop for the months to come.
Obviously. And thank you so much for the pomp. I appreciate it. A lot of fun friends, a lot of cool opportunities here. Aether Drift, obviously, dropping in the next 2 days. Our racers will get 2 packs along with their entry. So we've seen some of those hot new commanders. But in the matter of fairness and access, we didn't include any of those from the upcoming set. Just so that everyone has a bit of more equal playing field. And people have decried the lack of Simic representation. I can assure you, the Simic do what they always do with vehicles, break everything. So, they didn't get a seat at the table. Shock, surprise.
Simic is still paying for the sins of Nadu.
Yes, we have yet to redress that. And so we have the lovely Drucifer, a.k.a. Drewster, who will be announcing and calling our racers up. And we'll see which ones get started.
The neat thing about not including any of those new commanders is that they could open them in their packs. They could still include them into their deck.
Exactly correct.
You're still going to see them.
Right.
But you got some gems in that list that they can choose from.
We had a lot of help from the community, and it's been quite interesting. And so we have our first racer coming up. And interestingly, this is Jared Wyatt. He's country but cunning.
What do you think is a top pick at this table?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, we have some very straightforward vehicle identities, but we also went outside of the box with some of our choices, especially to represent some other ones. Ayara, I think, is quite an interesting idea. Miria, is a bit unusual. Graz is hilarious. So I definitely different ones. I mean, of course, we know some very strong ones.
Hey, as a pre-con fan, Mishra turning artifacts into creatures that can then crew vehicles.
Of course.
Is pretty cool.
The brothers.
You got to throw it out to the OGs.
The brothers are classic, and we see the Tamer of Makwa, which was an interesting idea. It gives your artifacts Unearth and Ward. And so, something a little different. Unsurprisingly, we see one of the strongest ones, the Mono Black Sazerac, the Silent King, being chosen first. It comes from the Warhammer pre-con, infinite combos with a ham sandwich, pretty standard idea. Wow, strong. Miria, just what I was talking about. Yeah, really interesting. That was Alex Wolf.
Now, there's a budget restriction to building these decks, correct?
That's true. It's 200. Now, you'll get extra points throughout the league for being less than 100, and then extra points for less than 50.
Hey, but I think the strategy with choosing monocolored is mana base is expensive, lands are expensive.
Oh, gosh.
You restrict yourself a lot just in terms of that budget.
It's true.
So if you don't have to spend any type of monetary value on what you need to cast your commander, and it's a great commander, I feel like that's a fine first choice.
I agree with that. And then we have some people who are fairly principled. Laffoon is getting vehicles, so whoever he can do to get as many vehicles in his deck, he will pick that commander. So it'll be interesting to see what these ideas are. Now, I love the Greasefang and some of the other ones from the Kamigawa. Obviously, vehicles are very important during that time. And while we wanted to include some new Cabina stuff, just wasn't really on the wave, you know?
It's got a like counterculture vibe to some of the picks in this list.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just saying they're not in EDH Rec top 50.
Oh, absolutely. And, I have to preach a little bit. It's my favorite set, Streets of Nicopena. But I can completely understand. I wanted to try to jam the Deluxe Dragster in any deck that I could, and we haven't gotten there. Okay, we have an Urza Chosen. That is Urza, Chief Artificer. From the Precon, pretty strong, pretty straightforward, reasonable choices.
Protects a lot of your vehicles. That's the one that it has affinity and gives menace and makes constructs.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the Deluxe Dragster would love to be there.
Yeah. 3 colors in the most expensive colors is gonna be a cost when you have to consider when deck building.
I agree, and I think the balance too, like you're trying to jam something huge with Urza. And getting those set of pieces, those are pretty cost intensive of their own.
Any of these commanders that can make things to crew vehicles,
oh god,
is just gravy on top of the value you're
yeah,
gonna get.
and
So
we
that
have,
commander does it by creating constructs.
Yeah, Katsumana. Oh, that was a Mishra, and so that Mishra was the eminent one. That was also from the opposite precon.
See previous point. Making copies and crewing vehicles.
Exactly. Now the Katsumina, which is the mono blue one, it animates 1 per turn. And so, also an interesting idea. Mono blue has a number of representatives today.
So walk me through the process. People walking up to the table, this wasn't seeded by anything. Random choice.
Yes, exactly. And we listed the commanders before, so people could do some research, get familiar, and get some plans. We also let people know, like, get a list of what you think is going to be bomb, because who knows what you're going to have.
So some people walking up to this table have ideas of what they
oh
want
my
to
God.
still be
I
there.
know people who already have the deck's names registered, and they have
Beautiful.
the deck full.
So what I'm looking for in this tiny camera screen is disappointment. People walking up late and people looking at that table and thinking, none of my list is here. That's what I want to see. That's what
I'm going to
hoping
see,
for.
probably in the 15 on, we're going to see some mixed movement. Now, we saw Optimus Prime go. Classic, pretty straightforward. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to be a hero? One of my personal faves, Cosima, God of the Voyage. That is the backside, which is the Omen Keel. Literally everything that you could want. A vehicle, a person who cares. Also, its exile ability lets you get lands. So ramping in some, unexpected ways. A lot of cool effects that could happen there.
That's the flip card?
You're exactly right, yeah.
I'm telling you, one of my favorite things to do in a commander deck is to have a commander that costs 2 or less mana. Having a for sure powerful turn 2 play in that format just seems so great, especially when we're looking at a field of, something that's going to be generally a little bit more slower with you windmill slamming vehicles.
You're exactly right. And then also when you're setting up your curve, when you're building out, you have that spot right at 2 or 3 that really helps to form the deck around it. And so, yeah, smart choices for sure.
Now, you said some of the competitors have some identity wrapped up into these commanders, even before they walk up to the table. Meaning,
it's true.
They have a play style that they like jamming in this type of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, you have some of the killers, Stephen Liu, Blondie, who are going to be looking for the exact tack turn, point-by-point measurement for their choice. There are others who have a bit more of an aesthetic idea. I think it was Gwen who's really liking the idea of the commanders being the artifacts, like vehicles themselves, which we included just for variance, Cars can drive cars. It happens all the time.
Cars can drive cars. In fact, I think that is called carpooling. Is what I think that actually is.
I think that's quite right. That was Groz that just got taken, and that is the unstoppable Juggernaut. We've seen Juggernauts throughout the history of Magic. This just happens to be a Phyrexian, legendary creature.
What gems do you think are still left on that list? Or surprises. What are surprises that are still up there?
Ozkier is a well-known combo deck. Greasefang is a fairly straightforward kind of plan.
I'm surprised at the lack of mono red picks. I'm gonna be honest, because
Well, we
especially
have
the ones that are up
Inmalar.
there. Yeah, that are still up there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we
like-
have both the Pia and Kieran, and then those are the mono red ones. And I agree, it's a pretty straightforward and well established deck archetype. Now this is Garrison Hall. He's been a very lucky person, so we'll have to see who he feels about what's left.
Tell me about his luck.
He in the last league he pulled 2 Shouldreds back to back, pack to pack. It was out of control.
How do you feel about luck? Is that like mean he spent it going forward, or that he
It's
is
a great
just
question. Perhaps it's this dichotomy that I have luck when I need it.
How much gas is in his gas tank? We're talking vehicles. How much is left?
It's pretty high. It's pretty high, I have to say. Let me see. We just got chosen. Drafna. Unexpected. So this is a mono blue artifact oriented commander, a 2-drop if I recall. The founder of Lot Na. Interesting flavor. Interesting deck ideas.
Interesting. Like I said, I like 2 mana. I like coming down early.
Yeah.
This one does seem like it doesn't synergize as well as some other mono blue staples that are up there, but it does crew vehicles.
It does. And the copy abilities are interesting. You know, in our first track, which is Gombri's Age, instants and sorceries cost 1 less to cast. And so this guy's going to be great for that. Okay. And so Depala, classic, Boros, vehicle, well-known, commander. It's a straightforward class. But we have such a great variety now of vehicles. I'm sure we'll see something quite interesting.
I mean, when I think driving a vehicle, there's no classic steampunk trope other than getting those dwarves in there driving vehicles. Like
she has cogs on her body. Like, my God.
Commander was made for the theme of this. So now I imagine we're going to see a lot of staples as players start building their decks related to that. Is there anybody hubbub in the community about like what are the top 10 vehicle things you're jamming in to this roadster?
So we tried to get some copies of these commanders because obviously they're probably good in those decks within themselves. And we just saw Venser Corp Puppet, which is our Jameer offering. He's a counter guy. Venser, sad story, wonderful planeswalker, a sojourner from time ago, got completed, and he was blue-white before, and now he's black-blue. Does some interesting weird things, for sure.
Making a token matters.
Making a token is real.
A couple more hoops to jump through with that one to make a token, but when it happens, viable abilities.
So we just saw Ozgear, the Reconstructor, get taken, and if you're looking for the win, Ozgear has so many great combo lines, it's wild. And then we've just had our first vehicle taken, which was the Belligerent. The one that we really loved. He attacks and he grades a treasure token. You can play off the top of your library. My God, what's not to love? And so now we've got about 10 out, and we're seeing people kind of getting down to that time on their lists. That was Blondie grabbing Blaster DJ.
Here's the deal, though. He knew coming in. He had his eye on that.
He's one of those who has the plan for any of the commanders that was available.
I've lost a lot of life in Commander games to him over the years, and not usually in straightforward ways. They're usually about there's a way that you could do things 10 steps more complicated. He found a way to do it.
And he's great at it.
It's fantastic.
A lovely player. Wonderful to see. We saw Miriam just get picked. Herd Whisperer. Loves the vehicles. Loves the mounts. Mounts are also a good idea as an alternate and or like a sub-theme as well. These are generally creatures that can obviously crew vehicles.
We got a put back there.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, maybe I think
Some content. I think they're getting some counsel from the members around.
I think we're to the part that I mentioned before where it's not their first pick and now they have to settle.
Right.
We're in that good feeling place.
And this is where we see skill and focus really come to the forefront. Another one that seems pretty straightforward, Liberator, Urza's Battle Softer.
What would be your first pick? What would you have jammed?
To challenge myself, probably Ayara. I don't have a Rakdos deck. Sacrificing things, I'm not quite there yet in my mind. I have permanence attachment. And that would have been a good challenge, I think. If I was just trying to go for the win, Osgear. Like, the combo lines are so easy through it. And, like, any of the Demir ones would be great, because Hashaton has been destroying every format that you can play something terrible in. Okay, that's my girl. Ayara, she just got chosen. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of great choices.
You hear yelling in the background. It's gone. So, you talked about special rules for weeks of play. What does that look like?
So they're tracks. So in the first week, we have our qualifying heats. And so that'll be, you're playing, whoever wins, those points will be allocated so that we have the pod set for next week. The second week of any track is where you get the points for winning. Now your deck restrictions, those points will be happening every week. And so even if you're not perhaps winning towards it, the hopefully point gap won't be so diametrically opposed to others who may be in the same class, if you will. The first one is Gombri's Ancient. That is instants and sorceries cost 1 less to cast. The restriction for the deck, I should say the bonus point for the deck is 30% instants or sorceries. So you get a point from having that for that track.
Wait, what can you do with these points? Like, what are we looking at here?
The points are obviously for a tournament style. We're going to be cutting. We're at 26, I believe. So we will cut to top 8. And those 8 will have a tournament. Anyone who's not in that, the point that you accrue through the league will allow you to bet on players winning games in that tournament. And so we'll have a prize thing, kind of like Chuck E. Cheese and tickets. You'll have X amount, and at X point, you'll get packs, you'll get sleeves, you'll get all these different kind of options for those points. And so even if you're just outside of that top, you still have a lot of opportunity to win a lot. And what's not to gamble on a track?
It's the reason we watch racing, right? It's the reason.
And the crashes.
We will see plenty of that in pods of
yes.
Magic the Gathering.
Yes, we will.
You don't think you'll see crashes in some vehicle commander games. You're in for business.
That was Katsumina, the animated mono blue. And so that is only one mono blue left. That's Padine, which is interesting. So the second week is the Nameless Lair of Mahasuchi. And that'll be when a creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And so it's very aggressive, very straightforward. We wanted to ramp that power up. The last track is the York Pavilion. And it will be whenever you deal combat damage to one or more opponents, create a treasure token, a food token, and a clue token. The points I forgot to mention for the second track, Maha, is attacking with the creature with the highest power. And so, likelihood, 20s, 30s, 40s, depending on how you build your deck, you go much further, but you'll get a point for that in your game. The last one, it'll be the most food eaten during a game.
Now, these were published ahead of time.
You're exactly right.
So there is some strategy that you could, if you think you're going to go pretty far in that race.
Right.
There's some strategy in your commander choice and the way you build your deck along the way.
Exactly.
To emphasize some of those.
True, and a lot of these themes have pre-cons and or decks that are well known in the format, and so it's not necessarily you're buying 30, 40, 50 cards to put a deck that's well together, especially with the budgetary restraint. We wanted to have some ideas that were pretty broad. to give everyone a fair playing field. And, there are some very obvious commanders that we did not put on here. There are a couple of others, Urzas, that need to stay where they are. They're doing what they are doing,
Not to say they can't put them in their deck.
Not at all, no.
But it's not going to have the
But
protected.
that's a pretty hefty attack on your budget when you're throwing in a certain artificer of a mono blue variety. So we'll have to see. And I know a few people have fully committed, $50 or less, every single one. And so, yeah.
I out of principle, I feel like I should put some of my Chuck E. Cheese points towards those players.
Exactly. You have to think that they're mine for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And then also, what a thrill to see the different changes, because they are all published, all the decks, because they have to be registered. And so in week 1, you sit across so-and-so, their deck is out of control. You see 3 things, like, wow, that was crazy. So yeah, you can go and look and see what they were using, try to look for yourself for a strategy. I think it kind of adds a bit of dynamic to be able to see what other people are doing. Get some ideas as well. We have newer players, of course, and some enfranchised players. And so we all get to learn a little bit.
In a league like this, how do you enforce a budget restriction like the one you have in mind? Because I get the spirit behind it. You want to balance the playing field so it doesn't become, just a race to the deepest water.
Yeah.
But how do you enforce that? Are there apps out there, websites? What do you guys use?
So once all of those commanders have been chosen, those individuals will register the deck to one of the TCG player associated deck building. Architect, Tapped Out, Moxfield. And so they will give us those deck names, and we will log those names along with them. Every week, Tuesday at 6:15, the decks are finalized. At that point, if there's a random spike in a card, it won't affect it for this week. But they have to be registered at that point. If you don't have the budgetary allowance and the restriction, DQ, you're out this week. Just like any race would. And so we have that as a barometer, and you can make as many changes as you care to between, that time. So we're testing it out, and I think this should be pretty straightforward.
I'm thinking, I see that there's some commanders up there, and I know that room looks pretty packed, but also I know that I don't see some faces that I normally see. So are there some people who didn't get to pick a commander tonight that are gonna end up still being involved in the league?
Yes, there's some of us contact. Some people are unfortunately sick. Rough stuff going around, as you know. Certain emergencies have happened, and so even if you're not here, of the commanders that are remaining, they will be assigned one based off their placement of, we'll call it a wait list or such. So X number of people, the first person will get the first one in alphabetical order. And it just goes that way for the people who are not able to be here for the draft. And so we will notify them, everyone who they are. And so they'll have still the same amount of time, everything they need to make the decks. Now our first race will be on the 19th. So everyone has got 2 weeks to get their decks together, acquire pieces, talk amongst themselves, and the Discord server for this, the MNDGMS 500, is alive with theory, idea, lore, and so we are definitely going to be leaning on that. And if there's some changes that we need to make in the rules, of course we'll have to. This is a living kind of league, but I believe that we have seen all of our friends grab our commanders. And so I'd like to just review some of these ones that weren't chosen.
I am very surprised by the ones I'd mentioned before, the 2 mono red ones, on a couple of facts. Red is an excellent artifact color. Yeah. And more importantly, being an excellent artifact color, it is an excellent color to destroy artifacts. So in this setting, when you're really leaning into the race and the vehicles, I'm very surprised that we have 2 mono red staples up there that can create bodies to crew things that are also in a great color and reasonable cost mana wise.
Absolutely.
So those 2 surprised me still being up there.
I agree as well, and because both are Thopters flying, the evasion is very important, being that we see so many of the very high-costed ones go. A bunch of 6s, a bunch of 5s happened pretty quickly, and being able to get underneath that kind of strategy, a focus around that commander, you're going to move pretty far in a pod just by having that
Now,
accessibility.
their pods, are they going to be randomized when they get there?
That's true. So the first week is just pure random.
Okay.
And so then it'll be wins from there, bring you into a category. And those categories, winners, whatever. And then those get randomized and then assigned those pods. So at 6:30 on Wednesday nights, you will be in that pod beginning. 6:15 is where you'll need to be registered. Everyone here. Obviously, if you're not here registered by 6:15.
So if you're in a good heat and you keep winning races, you're going to get harder races?
You have to. Because, A, you're changing so often.
Yeah.
And the points being accumulated. Like, there are usually 2 to 3 points every week that are not winning points. So
that's your blue shell mechanic,
you're
right?
exactly correct.
You have people right in first place. They have a good deck. They have a good commander. They have a good strategy. But if you don't lean into that flavor of the week, you may be leaving points on the table.
Absolutely. And those points definitely make up for them, especially as we go along. Keeping it under $50, getting 2 points every week, you don't even have to be here, and you're in contention. But I know all of our players are quite excited to take a look and kind of get into really building these decks and making them go.
What about you? Do you have any picks that are still on the table that surprise you?
So, Priestfang is an interesting one to me. It is kind of straightforward. I thought the Orzhov would be a kind of twist, something interesting to people. I love a Reanimator loop. We also have some great pieces that came out recently. Kembal, the mayor, makes tokens, gets life drain. There are a lot of great things that are going to be a part of this league that having black and white as a center would be. Now, I don't know if everyone's thinking that way, but there's so many things that punish other people and slow people down in those colors. And I think that may be a missed opportunity. The Padim, having hexproof on your artifacts, there are a lot of really intense things that you can do. Changing everything to artifacts, stealing, that seems a pretty classic idea. I would say also, I think Liberator is just a fun idea. I could see maybe, more success-oriented or status-oriented individuals may not be kind of thrilled by it. But we thought we'd try something a little different. And then the Weatherlight, a well-known classic ship through the history of Magic with a lot of really interesting opportunities. So yeah, I'd say those are the couple of ones that I thought perhaps would go based off of their merit.
You heard me fanboy over Magic lore. That Dominaria age is uniquely Magic to me.
Yeah.
So I would really be rooting for people trying to drive that Weatherlight.
I agree with you. I would love to have seen a few of the
colorless is a challenge.
Yeah, and it can be expensive. So I do understand that a bit. But also you have I think, a greater flexibility as well. Because you can only have colorless, thus the pool is more linear, so you have a more clear idea. I know that for some people, I'll be honest, for me, it's 2 to 3 weeks just gathering cards and throwing them in a pile and going one by one. And so building decks that maximize points with such variance, instant sorceries 1 week, +1/+1 counter strategies the next week, that requires a fairly agile and flexible mind. And so, in my mind, it may be more straightforward with less colors or even colorless. You only have so many options.
Well, you're saying it's a brewer's paradise to be handed just an array of commanders alongside a theme, alongside a weekly assignment.
Yeah.
Alongside the restriction in monetary value. Mm-hmm. So you automatically, you're going to cut out some of your, commander top 100 staples.
Right.
You're going to purge them from the list because you just can't afford to put
them. You
them
can't
afford them. Especially with your color pie.
Right.
You may even be able to apply more filters to that. So
I agree. And also for people who, we just had a Foundations League, we have people coming into the hobby. They don't have very deep collections. And so having a focus having Boros, you're going to get a great number of options at different price points that allow you to create a deck that kind of does what you want it to do. And I think, you don't have to have these very large collections to make something that's very effective. And we kind of tried to balance that too with, extra points for budgetary restraint because, there's certainly zero cost artifacts that are really cool and very expensive and do a lot of things. And some people could work that, and others is like Phyrexian Walker is a couple of cents. There's a zero drop. There's that option, and I think that option really helps to brew something a little bit more dynamic,
There's a couple achievements that I have in my mind. I want to see if you can unlock for me.
Okay.
So these are just suggestions. You don't have to include them, but I am going to put pressure on you just by naming them.
Sure.
So what I would love to see is an expensive card. I would love to see like a points for a Phyrexian Dreadnought to crew something. Like I want it to make it on the table, no stifle, and I want it to turn sideways, not to attack, but to crew something. Can we make that happen?
I guess we'll throw it out to the community as perhaps a hazard on the track.
That's a no, but I'm gonna keep fighting for it.
We'll have to see. Now, I do love the idea of some of the comedy. Recently, we've seen a Galta deck that is mostly vehicles that does silly things. Does the Primal Hunger, I think is the name.
Yeah, when you have arms that long, you really can steer well.
Obviously.
Obvious.
And so, what a fun, interesting idea. And so, I would love to see people go off in those different kind of ideas. Cosima vehicle, Omen Keel, very straightforward. You could do some interesting things in there with mono blue vehicles, but you have a pretty serious line. Myria, though, red, green, artifact, ramp, and exiling cards, this is a very wide open, playing field and opportunity.
How many turn 2 smuggler Thopters are you going to see?
That's a great question.
Real talk.
So, if I recall, there's 26. I'm gonna venture to say 13. It's just exactly what you want. I actually gonna say I'm not sure about their availability, but the Hope of Gearper, that 1-drop legendary, incredible. A little on the pricier side, but still you can work it with a budget, and I think that would be of interest for people. That would be a great choice. And then just the random one-off things, equipment that creates bodies, enchantments. We have such an opportunity here. So I think it'll be interesting.
You think there's going to be room in this selection for some counter meta deck? I want to see the deck that just sleeves up artifact hate across the board. I want to see that. I want to see. I don't know. You're looking at the list of commanders right here.
Yes,
I'm thinking more of the list of people.
I agree.
In the room, there's gotta be somebody.
Some of the hardcore tournament grinders, we won't say they're on the sadism scale, but they do love to crush dreams. We'll just put it out there. And so I could definitely see...
There's some Aether Flex effect. There's some, at the beginning of your upkeep, pay mana to keep these artifacts around.
Yeah, that's true.
And you could just lean into that in this type of
And they're not that expensive, which is a thrill.
They're not. I'm telling you, Brewer's paradise.
Yeah, I think it'll be of interest who we see out of week 1, who's in these premier tables, who are in these premier pods, and see what that fight looks like. Because in that first week, you're getting a few points, but not based off of winning. That just sets you into the pod. Second week, through 2:55 on a Tuesday, publish the deck. Totally different from your last week.
So there's room in there to kind of do the bait and switch.
Oh, yeah.
People are expecting one thing, and they get another. Or you may go into conversation with people in that room and you say, hey, this is what I'm planning. What are you planning? And when it comes to deck submission...
I've been told that everything's a resource, and if my opponents can be, why not?
I have one final question for you.
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot about this philosophically, but if you crew a vehicle in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it still go vroom vroom?
I think it's the question of the ages. It's really hard, but in my heart, I say Yes. Tyler Bones, thank you so much. I couldn't have asked for a better host. We have our decks, we have our players, we have our commanders.
We have race dates.
We have race dates, we have race tracks. We are ready to begin this league in full, and we will keep you abreast. There'll be some interesting streams coming soon of some of our games, some commentary. So keep it tuned here. Thank you so much.